Guten Morgen everyone, today we are going to make a whole grain bread. And talking about grains, what I have here is spelt, which maybe you don't know what it is, but it's an old and ancient grain. It's wheat, but it's one of the first wheats of the history, and it was kind of lost in time, but now it's back. And I have it here so we can make our own flour. The interesting thing about the spelt is of course its taste, but if you're willing to make some kind of big loaf with a big ear, maybe this is not the right grain to use because it has a lot of protein, as I said, but it's not that good. So it's perfect for making rustic bread. And that is what we are going to do today. And I am also going to use this one, which is triticale, which is a hybrid between wheat and rye. And it's going to give much flavor and aroma to the bread. So, as I said, let's start grinding and may the gluten be with us. And finally, after a few minutes, we have the spelt flour here and the triticale flour here. This is the freshest flour you can get. So now what we need is a formula. So here it is. Remember that you can download my app free for your Android or iPhone. And then add the recipe to it. So as I told you at the beginning, this is going to be a rustic bread. So we're going to use sourdough starter. This sourdough starter is a whole grain sourdough starter. In case you don't have one like this, you can use the one that you have at home. But if you want to build a whole grain sourdough starter, this is what you should do. We start with the sourdough starter that we have. In this case, I have a white flour sourdough starter, which it doesn't have to be quite active. In a jar, we put some of this sourdough starter, and then we start adding spelt flour. A few spoons, and that's enough. Now we add the water. Since we are going to do this by the eye, we are not measuring anything at all, it is really easy. Start mixing it, and if you see that it needs some more water, you add it. The texture that we're looking for is this, maybe like a puree. And now we leave it here on the counter at around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, until it doubles or triples in size. Remember that if you want to learn more about sourdough and sourdough bread, in the description you can find the link to my sourdough bread masterclass. Click it and start right now. Since this recipe is an easy recipe, we are not going to need at all. But if you have a stand mixer, or maybe you just bought a new stand mixer and you want to use it, go ahead and use it. But I am going to use just a bowl. I will put all the ingredients there, mix them, and let the Autolyze do all the job for us. In the bowl we put 500 grams of spelt flour. Now we add 300 grams of the triticale flour, and now 200 grams of regular bread flour, but if you want you can use more whole wheat flour. And here comes the sourdough starter, 200 grams. I want you to look at the bubbles and the activity that this sourdough starter has. It has to be really active. 20 grams of salt, and finally 760 grams of water. Now that I have all the ingredients, the only thing that I'm going to use is this Danish whisk. If you still don't know what Autolyze is, it's just mixing flour and water and let them knead by itself, to hydrate by itself. That will develop the gluten network and you'll see that the dough is perfectly kneaded. Okay, so that's all what we're going to do, just mixing. We'll let the Autolyze do all the job for us. So now let me cover it and leave it here on the counter for around 1 hour. By the magic of the gluten, it's been an hour, and as you can see, the dough seems to look the same. But if I wet my hands, you'll see the difference. So now we pick one part of the dough and start stretching it and folding it to itself. Look, the dough is perfectly kneaded by itself. That's the Autolyze. Let me do a few more stretching and foldings, and now the dough looks perfect. So, the dough is ready. Now what I have to do is to cover it. And I'm going to let it rise here on the counter until it doubles in size. And here I have the dough fully proofed. Take a look. It has doubled in size, and it's full of air and bubbles, and it smells incredible. So we are now ready to shape it. So now we sprinkle some flour on the countertop and we unmold slowly the dough. It has a lot of air. Take a look. Great. Now we divide it and we start shaping the loaf. This is really easy. It's just a ball. Like in French, a ball. This is the shape that we're going to do. We give it some tension, making this kind of stitches. And with my hands, I give it the final shape. So now that the bread is shaped, I have to put it in the mold, in this banneton, this French banneton with some linen on it, which is a classic form. Put some flour on the bottom, and now comes the trick. Normally, what I do is to put this beautiful face of the bread on the bottom, and the stitches stays up. And in this case, we are doing this rustic bread, and what is characteristic of this bread is that it opens by itself. What I'm going to do is to put the stitches on the bottom. So here I go. Stitches on the bottom, final adjustments, sprinkled some more flour. Now I cover it. We are ready. So here I have the bread fully proof, ready to be baked. See how gorgeous it is. It hasn't grown that much because since this is a rustic bread, but take a look, beautiful. Let me get the Dutch oven and we bake it. Okay, so here I have my Dutch oven fully preheated. It's around 480 degrees Fahrenheit. So now I am going to unmold the bread on the skillet. And remember, since we shaped the bread upside down, the stitches are now on the bottom. But now I flip it and we have the stitches on top of it. So now when we close the lid, we let the bread to open by itself. We'll bake it first for 20 minutes. May the gluten be with it. Oh, it's been 20 minutes. Let's open the lid. I love it. So let me take it back to the oven for 20 minutes more and I'll be back. And here I have the fully baked bread. Wow, isn't it beautiful? Okay, I'll put it here on the cooling rack and I'll be back. So here I have the bread. Finally, it's kind of still warm, but take a look, it's beautiful. And what? Oh, what is this one? I have two. Well, if you paid attention at the beginning of the video, I divided the dough in two pieces. With the first piece, I baked this bread. And with the second piece, What did I do? I baked this one. Okay, so we have reached the end of the video and I hope you have enjoyed this new rustic bread recipe again. And you should do this at home too. So now comes the best part, trying the bread. Wow. It smells so good with the spelled flour freshly milled. I hope you have enjoyed this video. And if you want to learn more about sourdough bread and sourdough starter, I encourage you to check the link on the description. And remember, this masterclass was especially designed for you.